One second, I'll show you when to go. Okay, hold on.
Good evening, everyone. Is that testing? I think so. I'm good. I can keep going? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Greenberg Central School District PTA Council Candidates Night Forum this evening. This is the first time we have been back since the pandemic. I believe the last one was 2019. And we are very happy to be in person. This evening, we have two candidates who will be introduced by our moderator. And our moderator for this evening is Christine Kane. And just for me, I'm sorry, I'm the immediate past president of the PTA Council. Edith Horn is the current president of the PTA Council. She was unable to be here this evening and asked me to speak in her stead. So I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to introduce to you our moderator, who is Christine Kane, who will come and tell you about herself, and she will introduce the table, the board, those who are running for election and re-election, as well as who's at their table as well. So Christine, if you can come, Christine Kane. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the PTA Council, we welcome you to Candidates Night. My name is Christine Kane, and I am a lifelong resident of Greenberg Central School District. I'm an alumna. I attended Greenberg pre-K through 12th grade, and I'm a proud mother of one student and one incoming student for next year. My son, Caden Kane, attends kindergarten in Leah Jackson. My daughter, Saoirse Kane, will be attending pre-K next year in ECP, and I have a 1-year-old who will eventually be a Greenberg student. So this is my second year as a secretary on the ECP LFJ PTA, and it's also my second year moderating Candidates Night. Thank you to the PTA Council for giving me this opportunity. Our candidates for the school board are Ms. Tracy Mayers, who is our district current school board president, and she's up for re-election. And we also have Ms. Anna Jacobson, who is an active member, parent member in the PTA and on the social emotional learning committee. And she, so these are our two candidates. The timekeeper is Ms. Muriel St. Armand, and she's the president of the Woodlands Middle School PTA, and she will use a stopwatch and signal at specific times so that you are both aware of what time you have. So the format for this evening will include opening statements from each candidate that should not exceed 3 minutes, responses to questions by each candidate that should not exceed 2 minutes each, final questions by each candidate to each other that should not exceed 2 minutes each, submissions for each candidate that should not exceed 2 minutes each. The order of openings and submissions have been randomly selected. During the question and answer period, I will alternate the order in which each candidate answers each question. Now that we have covered the format, let's get started. So, our first opening statement will be from candidate Ms. Tracy Mayers. Ms. Mayers, you may begin.
Thank you, Ms. King. You forgot to say I'm a PTA member as well. Yes, it's okay. So Tracy Mayers, I'm a proud mom of 3 children, all of which attend the school district, 2 at Woodlandsville High School, the 3rd at Highview Elementary School. I am, I'll explain my PTA life. I'm a PTA member from ECP before we realized it wasn't a PTA. And all the way up through now at Woodlandsville High School.
and I've been in varying positions on the PTA, like the PTA at DF Jackson. I believe I was treasurer for 2 years, which was very difficult. We didn't know how we were doing things. I then took my daughter, my eldest daughter, actually out of the district for a year because, like many families, I listened to a lot of the negativity of the school district and I got a little nervous and brought her right back the very next year. I then was on the council as vice president, I believe, and then president of the council, and I was also RJ Bailey secretary, I believe, and then Lansville High School secretary, and then I ran for the Board of Ed, and have been on the Board of Ed for, this is now my 6th year. I also grew up and was raised in Greenberg as well, like Miss Kane, a little older than me though, and left for a little bit, lived in other cities, got my education and came back when I had my children. Professionally, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I do a lot of volunteer work before I had my kids, I should say, because since I had my kids, I started volunteering in the schools. As a licensed clinical social worker, I provide mental health counseling to lots of different people with different psychiatric illnesses. I also work with children who have autism. That is it. Thank you, Ms. Mears. Next, we will hear from candidate Erin Jacobson.
Hello, my name is Erin Jacobson, and I want to thank the PTA Council for hosting tonight's event, and for the people who came out tonight to ask questions. We appreciate it. My background actually is very similar to Tracy's. I'm a licensed art therapist. I have a small private practice, and so I work part-time, so it gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of what I do outside of work. And similar to Tracy, work with a lot of different diagnoses and autism, and part of what art therapy does for me is gives my clients a different way to express themselves in a way that might not be expected, and sometimes words are not sufficient in talking about and explaining how you truly feel, and art gives that mechanism. And so I apply a lot of those thoughts and ideas and practices to the volunteer work I do in the district. So when my daughter is in 4th grade at Bailey, and my other daughter is in 1st grade at Jackson, we've had a really, really wonderful experience in the district that we really appreciate. I'm originally from Philadelphia, so I did not grow up in the area, but after graduate school at NYU, I stayed in New York and don't really have any intention of going anywhere else. And we really love and appreciate the district. I'm very fortunate to have a really wonderful neighborhood where we have students from kindergarten up through seniors at Woodlands. And I've been able to see the progression of how these students learn and grow throughout the district. So it's been able to foreshadow some of what my kids will get to experience moving forward, and that's very exciting. And part of through the neighborhood is how I got to learn about the PTA. I served as Leah Jackson's PTA president for 2 years, and then I took a bit of a step back and served in a more volunteer chairperson position at Highview as the SEL liaison. Some work around fundraising and have done that this year for all 3 elementary schools and helped raise $9,000 for the 3 of them in total, which I think was pretty awesome, so thank you families for contributing. And what I've been doing since, the PTA Council actually recommended me to be the parent rep on the SEL committee district-wide. And that experience is what really encouraged me to run for the board, because I've gotten to see both sides, the parent side, the student side, and then the staff side, and our staff are phenomenal, and I really wanted to do what I could to learn more and be a part of that community. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. We will now begin the questions for the evening. The first question is, what motivates you to run for the Board of Ed? Ms. Jacobson, first.
So I answered this a little bit already.
Sorry.
Okay. Good? Okay. My experience with the PTAs and meeting amazing parents who are committed to the district and committed to their kids' education really started this process. And then meeting they work with through the SEL committee and through PTA really showed me how many innovators and creative thinkers and motivated everyone. Like everyone is incredibly invested, and to see what is possible in this district is very motivating for me. I think we still have some things to work on, which is part of why I'm here, because I think I've learned enough to be able to bring it to the board in order to help move things forward. I think I've heard a lot from staff. I feel like I'm a trusted member of the community where people have shared these things with me, and I want to bring them forward so that we can work on them together.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Ms. Mears?
Hi, my name's Laura. I'm a little masochistic, a lot of work. You know, the board needs some consistency right now. We have, over the past 3 years, I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're about to have 5 brand new board members. And there are some great things in this district that need to continue. And there's also some misconceptions on how and what the Board of Education really does, what our role is. And there is more of a response to perception very often. And so you really do need some consistency in that room to be able to talk about the way things, I guess, were many, many years ago and what could be in this district and what we've seen over the years, the way things were 12 years ago when, you know, my children were very little and I was on the PTA to now. So part of that is why I am running to stay on the school board. Also, I think I have a really kind of a base way of making sure that everyone is heard and involved. And I think it's very easy for school districts sometimes to only deal with the parents that are directly in front of you. How many seconds? Oh, geez. To deal with the parents that are right in front of you, like the active parents, like the PTA parents, but not always the parents that are silent or unavailable, working, mentally ill, or disabled in some way. And those children also deserve to have a voice. Those families also deserve to be heard. And I think I reach out to families like that, and I speak to families like that, and try to advocate for them in that way. That's why.
Thank you, Ms. Mears. The next question will begin with you. What is your favorite thing about Greenberg Central School District?
I want to say diversity, but I don't, because it's kind of easy to say, and it's not always my favorite thing. It actually makes things more difficult. I think probably the offerings. I think Greenberg Central School District has so many vast things to offer the students. If you're a super bright academic student, we have supports for you. If you're a student with multiple other ways of learning, we have supports for you. If you're an athlete, there's supports in the schools and there's supports in the community for you. If you have difficulty, communicating, there's supports for you as well. So I think I would say the offerings and availability. Like I said, I took my oldest out of school for 2nd grade and took her to a local private school. And one thing I learned very quickly is that they didn't have a lot of offerings. They had what they had, and I think the families were different, but not necessarily the education. And so the offerings that we have here in this school district are awesome and amazing. And they have something for everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Mears. Ms. Jacobson?
So one of my favorite things, I'm going to say diversity, and I agree with you on your points too. I think diversity in the way I think about it is not just racially, but also culturally and socioeconomically and religiously and all across the board. And this is not just in our student body, this is also in our leadership and in our staff. So you can see whoever you are or whoever you identify as, you can see your person framework in the district that shows you that you can be anything you want to be, that you can keep moving forward, that you can strive for greatness. And to Tracy's point, there's a lot of ways to get there. And it might not be an academic approach. You might not be going for a higher degree. You might be, in many of our cases, we have a spelling bee champion, a EMT champion. We have success that looks at a lot of different ways, and I think that is also where our diversity shows, is that success is defined differently, and all of that is encouraged here.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Our second question is, where do you feel there are areas in the district that need improvement, and what is your vision to work on them, Ms. Jacobson?
So I recognize that if I'm elected to the board, the first year is going to be a massive learning curve. It's been described to me as a fire hose of information that you just get all at once, and so I know that that I don't know everything, and you don't know what you don't know until you're in it. So I know that that's going to be part of the process for me. But I do think from the multiple ways I've been involved in the district, you can see that communication is a massive thing that we need to work on, both externally and internally. I think we're still very siloed, and COVID made that worse. And I think now that we're hopefully on the other side of COVID, we can start to build bridges between our siloed schools, because I think that's an issue. I also would like to see more transparency on how finances are used and what are the outcomes of the initiatives that we put in place. And finally, I really want to work on SEL. That's a passion of mine, both professionally and personally, and I love that the district is committing to it. I think we need to go further. The thing I've noticed the most about what's come out of the SEL committee is that there are so many phenomenal ideas, and they don't come to fruition because there's, for lack of a better word, there's a gap. And ideas happen, and we talk about them, and we plan for them, and then they leave the room, and then they fall into this gap, and we never hear from them again, and they don't come to fruition. And I'm not quite sure where the gap is, or if it's the same gap every time this happens, but we need to streamline this process a little bit better. Dr. Iverson had a really beautiful, colorful flow chart for communication that came out this year, which I thought was great, but I would like to see that for more things, where staff, parents, we all know exactly where we need to go to get things done so that they don't fall into this gap and just have good ideas die, because that's what kills motivation.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Ms. Myers?
Yeah, I was going to say communication, but since you took that, so I'll think of something else. Probably inclusion. I feel like everyone is not included all the time, and I don't mind raising my hand and asking questions. I don't mind showing up all the time for things, but there are a ton of people. For every one person that shows up, there's 20 behind you that don't, for whatever reason it may be. And I think that it's important to grab those people and include them. I was, very disappointed when I go to meetings and people aren't there, or they don't show up. It's heartbreaking, and I think we need to do more things that include others. I know, for example, at one point in time, we had someone that did not support the school district run for the school board and get on. And people were very angry, and I had a conversation with our president at that time, and I said, you know what? She has to support the school district now, watch. And sure enough, as time went on, there were things that happened that forced someone who did not support the school district to have to support the school district because they weren't included. And when I think back to some of the major things that did not work in the school district over the years, one of which was heartbreaking, we had a major bond that failed. I think one of the major mistakes that we made was we did not listen to the people that didn't want the bond. We did not hear from them because we were so motivated to make it happen. And I just think and that's the downside of diversity. It's the downside of listening to people who are different. We don't really want to hear it, right? And it sounds negative. Oh my gosh. But I think inclusion, if we hear from people that are not necessarily like us and actually try to listen and hear what they're saying, it might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maris.
Sorry.
The next question will begin with you, Ms. Maris. What are your goals and measurement of success for said goals?
What are my goals and measurements for success?
For said goals.
For those goals. Okay. So if I could have my way. But see, so the funny thing about the board is you don't really get to do what you want to do, right? You have to do what you want to do plus 3 other people. And the people that run for the Board of Ed, for the most part, are all very headstrong. And so, as many people know, we have very long meetings because we have a lot of going around about what everyone wants to do, right? So if I had my way, I get goals, I could get my goals through, I would probably definitely include improving the communication in the district, improving what I would call like the customer service, the output, to make sure that parents and families feel heard a little bit more. Like I said, with inclusion, I think people aren't necessarily brought into the table, and then when they're brought in, they're not always heard, you're not able to always listen to one another. So improving communication, which would mean improving listening. So definitely a lot more surveys, but really just getting out there and talking to people and finding out, like, hey, you don't participate in this activity. Why is that? Hey, did you know we had a PTA, back to school night, whatever type of meeting? How come I didn't see you there? Like, what was it? Is it the timing? Is it that you're too busy? Like, what is it that makes it difficult for you? And then really getting that raw feedback and really realizing that. Although I realize in a school district that's not always possible because there's all these other things that need to happen. So we can't necessarily have a dedicated person to doing that. So realistically, what my goals would be to keep the achievement level high, the rigor, the expectations for our students high, as well as pushing every student, not just our highest flyers, but even the students that have the hardest time learning, making sure to continue to push them so they continue to do well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maris. Ms. Jacobson?
Well, first, I agree with everything Tracy is saying. I think that those would all be wonderful goals, and I share those. I would also like to see, in terms of greater transparency, like I mentioned earlier, to see, even if it's just a literal flowchart of who you go to for certain things to get certain things done. When we eliminated a couple positions at the start of COVID, those duties fell to principals, and part of me feels like they have a lot on their plates and they don't always have the help. So I would like to either see something that gives them a better framework for working through a process, beginning, middle, and end. If they're responsible for all those parts, I think it needs to be clear on how to do that so that we're all operating under the same expectations and the same bits of information. What I would also like to see right now, when you go to a board meeting, you ask a question and they write it down and they respond to you by email, but other people share that question, but no one gets the answer. So seeing the answer, and since it's on email, it's already typically typed up, I would like to see it put on the website so that other people who have that question get the answer as well, and they're not left feeling like, okay, but what was the solution? And I would also like to see that information be translated so that our families who might not be English speakers aren't cut out of the mix. That speaks to your earlier point about inclusion, is to make sure like we have 40% of our population that speaks one language and we're not speaking anything in that language, that is automatically cutting them out of the mix, and I don't think that helps anybody.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. The next question is, what can the board do to keep with increasing overall test scores, especially from the high school? Ms. Jacobson?
I attended I'm also a member of the Education and Wellness Committee, and so I was there at the last meeting when we went over the mid-year iReady scores. And you can see as the school progresses, the number of students who fall below grade level increases significantly. And I think we spend a lot of time talking about why that is and what can be done. I wonder if we spend enough time finding out what, especially in iReady, it's kids in the green that are above grade level, what those teachers, what those classes are doing there, and what can be learned from that experience and apply to the other classrooms as well. And I think that would shine some lights on things. I also think there seems to be a disconnect between the teachers and the administration and the board. And I think the teachers are the ones who are in the classrooms every single day, and I would love to hear more from them directly about what works, what doesn't work, what they need. In the past, I've been part of community and education wellness committees where there was questions about, like, do we need this test? I don't know. And so it's happening, but none of the teachers were involved in that conversation. And those are the people that know what information they gain from those tests and whether they're valuable or not. And I think we need to involve them more in the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Ms. Mears?
What was the question about the test scores you said?
It said, what can the board do to keep with increasing test scores, overall test scores, especially at the high school level?
To keep with what?
Increasing.
Don't start the timer. So I just want
To make sure you're answering now?
I am answering now, but I do have to go back to the other. So with the previous one, with the goals, because this thing actually short, but with the goals I was talking about from parents, one of the reasons why my goal would be to hear from the parents and make sure they're listened to is that having people return to the district is very important, and I think part of the reason why people do leave is because those private schools, parochial schools, they kind of attract to the parent and what the parent needs are. So I think if we would do that a little bit better, that would probably be helpful. Okay, increasing test scores. What can the board do? Continue to advocate with the administration to, especially in the high school, to have supportive programming. We do have a lot of good programs, but every child doesn't benefit from them all the time. So if you get to a higher level and you didn't, higher grade, and you didn't benefit from the program in elementary, you may have a gap. And so I don't know if you've heard me, I've asked several times about like weekend school, evening school, summer school came up. I didn't even realize that we don't offer summer school for our high school students, which is bad me. My girls achieve very highly, so they haven't failed the Regents exam, they haven't had to go to summer school. So I didn't realize that, I didn't know, and it's mind-boggling to me that we don't offer that, but also that we force the parents to pay for that. They take it in a neighboring district. But I also understand that we have our own financial constraints, right? So that's the other thing. We have different board members. Some people will tell you they want to pay for anything, other people want to pay for everything, right? So there are financial constraints, so I get that. But I think what the board can do is continue to advocate for and make their voice very clear that they want more programming to support the students that are not doing well.
Thank you, Ms. Mears. The next question is, do you support initiating a dual language bilingual program, Spanish-English, for all students, as these programs are seen as an asset and in neighboring districts offer such programs?
Yes. I mean, I want to say yes, but how much is it? I mean, at the end of the day, we have difficulty keeping teachers, and so there's several questions, right? How much is it? How much is that going to cost? And how would we do that without? So we'd have to hire several bilingual teachers, and that may be very difficult. And then how do we keep them? And then what's the outcome going to be? Like, we have students that have taken Mandarin and Spanish for many, many years, and then they don't necessarily get the seal of bilinguacy, or they're not fluent, which I guess you can't really become fluent from a language just by going to the school. You have to actually conversate, but my concern would be finance for that particular question. I would like us to get our language program really running well before doing that. I did want that as an elementary parent. I see you nodding because I did push for that. I did want that. We did not have language in Lee of Jackson or Highview. When I was at Lee of Jackson, I pushed for that. We ended up getting that administratively before I was on the board as a parent. I had a very good relationship with an administrator that was going to do what they needed to do to start that. And they chose Mandarin to start with. I would like for our children to learn Spanish earlier, because I do think it's a language that's a little more similar to English, and they could probably learn it. I also know we have a lot of native Spanish speakers, but they don't actually always know the mechanics of the language, which keeps them illiterate in many ways, because you may speak the language but not be able to read it or write it. That makes you illiterate in that language, even though you speak the language. So I would, love for our native speakers Spanish speakers to actually learn their language.
No. 30 seconds. No.
30 seconds ago.
Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Jacobson.
I would actually need to understand what that would look like more. I think I know people who have who are in districts with dual language programs, and I think on the surface it sounds really amazing because you're becoming a more global citizen, and I think that's awesome. But I think one of the things that I know when we went through the superintendent selection process, one of the candidates said, and it really resonated with me, was that we have so many initiatives and we don't always see them through to the end or know whether they're going in the right direction. And would this just be another cool thing that we start as an initiative but don't have the resources to back it up to have it come to fruition? And so I would need to do a lot more homework on that. And also I would love to hear from parents of other districts and teachers from other districts who have those programs to see what they think and whether it was worth integrating in their system that they did.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. The next question will begin with you. Ms. Jacobson, the district has been working on an SEL framework. How do you envision guiding district policy to help it align with SEL goals?
We need way more than 2 minutes to talk about all the SEL things I would want to talk about. Right now, what we're working on is developing the educational guidelines for integrating SEL into our curriculum. And why that is exciting is because it puts SEL, social emotional learning, on the same par as math and science and English and social studies, and recognizes that without those skills, you don't have the same success that you would have otherwise. And we're using the IB learner profiles and the Castle SEL profiles and overlaying them so that we're already taking what we have in place in the district and adding to it and expanding on it. There's actually a ton of really wonderful SEL things happening district-wide, but we're not yet at the point where we can showcase them all the way we want to. And once that's able to happen, like a little ahead of myself, we were instructed that this is year 0, that we are laying the framework and the groundwork for what is to come. And so then next year would be year 1. And so hopefully what we would see is SEL happening as part of the 6-day cycle all throughout the district. And students understanding the language of talking about emotions, understanding their impact on other people, how to work well with others, how to restore relationships when injuries happen to those relationships.
30 seconds.
All of those things are things that we are already started on, and we just need to highlight them and showcase them and then build them into our pre-existing structure so that kids understand how important it is.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Ms. Mears?
SEL is extremely lacking in the district. We need more staff. We need more social workers or psychologists, which are more expensive than social workers, or guidance counselors. We don't have time to wait. Every one day that a student feels left out, gets bullied, is sad, is a day that they're not doing their best in school. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Mears. The next question is, many staff have left the middle school, high school. Is there something the board can do to attract and keep staff? Sorry.
We pay them a lot more money. We don't have a lot more money. The board, so what can the board do? I think, again, as I said before, there's a misconception on how much and what the board actually does. The board is the overseeing body. 4 or more of us could actually do whatever we wanted to do, but we're not those type of people. It's not that type of board. And it hasn't been for the last 2 years or so. But the administration runs the middle high school, and the administration runs the district, the day-to-day. So what we do is we control the money. You will notice we pass resolutions to release X amount of dollars to hire people. If the administration recommends hiring person A and we vote that down, the person doesn't work. So that's the control, or that's the decision we have. When people choose to leave a job, it could be for any reason. It could be the work environment, it could be money, it could be their family situation, it could be because they're not a good teacher, it could be because they don't necessarily really want to work with a diverse population, because diverse population, as Ms. Jacobson said, doesn't just mean race. It means economic status, it means learning styles, it means different type of, gender identification. So you may have an employee that does not want to work in a diverse community. They think they do. Diversity sounds nice until you get in it and you're like, I don't agree with that, but this is what you have. So I don't know how much control the board has other than money, but sometimes you can pay. The very best districts don't always have the very best teachers either. So thank you. Or the highest paying districts, I should say. This is the very best district.
Thank you, Ms. Maris. Ms. Jacobson?
My children are not yet at Woodlands in the middle school or high school, so some of this is new information to me. I'm curious if there's exit interviews that are done with teachers. Okay, so I would want to know what the answers to those exit interviews are. And if it is money, I agree that usually people stick around when they're feeling they are compensated well. One of the things that has come up repeatedly in the SEL committee is staff burnout, and learning all of this about SEL for our kids and our students and all of that, but what about the people who are providing that information? I operate under the mantra of you can't pour from an empty cup. So if we're asking our teachers to maybe not get paid the most and maybe not have the newest facilities or resources, and also have all of these other mandates that they need to do within their curriculum, what happens if you don't support them in the ways that they need to be supported? So I know some of the teachers are taking it upon themselves to do SEL for each other, but it needs to be more than that. It needs to be things that come from the very top. And it doesn't always have to be financial. Sometimes it's just knowing that you're appreciated in a very tangible, real way that seems authentic and not just like, yay, you did a good job. Like it's Teacher Appreciation Month and week, and we need to do more to show them that they are valued, because no one wants to work in a place where they don't feel valued and they don't feel effective or they don't feel seen. And I think we can be very creative with how we do things. We have an ample SEL budget, and this is where I'm talking about streamlining the process to use those funds, because there's no excuse to not be doing this stuff, because we have already allocated the resources to do it. We're just not there yet.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. This question came from a student. What was your favorite subject in school? Do you think you would like it in Greenberg Central 7 now?
It's probably no surprise, I really loved art. One of my years in high school, I had to take driver's ed, and I couldn't take art, and I missed it tremendously. That's actually in high school is where I learned about art therapy, because my art teacher was a trusted teacher in my life, and I was able to talk to her about how I was struggling trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Pretty much everything I was picking wouldn't pay very well. And how do you make a profession and a living out of being an artist? And she handed me a book of art occupations, and art therapy was in there, and I thought she had it in her desk, like she was ready, and I really much appreciated that. I've met Ms. Cronin at the high school. I think she is great. What I would like to see that I think would be a little different in my high school was like 7 times the size. This high school's, like the senior class was quite big. But we had a lot of different types of art, so you got to try a whole lot of things. So that's what I would like to see happen at Woodlands. And if all of that is offered, then absolutely I would love taking art here, because I think it would be very cool. And there's some really incredibly creative students here, and I would love to see that continue and have everybody taking IB art and doing all kinds of cool stuff.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Ms. Mears?
I hate to tell you, my oldest had art 1 year, 7th grade, and my middle daughter hasn't had art at Woodlands Middle High School due to scheduling. Honor students don't necessarily have the space in their schedule for art, especially if they take music, and my girls take music. So that's sad. But anyway, I do want to go back to my prior question, only because Ms. Jacobson talked about exit interviews, and yes, we do have them. Unfortunately, they are emailed to the employee. They don't always return them. The board doesn't see them. We used to have a personnel committee, which the board abolished against my wishes, but I'm only one person, so right, we need 4 people. And the personnel committee actually created the exit interviews, which was a committee of the board members and an administrator, and we used to look at them. So what the board could do is we could go back to that process of maybe looking at exit interviews, but we don't have a personnel committee anymore, and all of us are really overstretched, so I don't know how or when that could happen. My favorite subject was math. I actually went to college on a math major and changed that my first semester, because college math was a whole nother animal. I don't know if my kids like math that much. I don't think so, but I like math. I just, not college math, I guess. But that was my favorite subject in school. I really liked logic class. I really liked doing, logic as well. And I think that the kids in Woodland should have more math supports. We have, as Ms. Jacobson talked about before, the iReady scores are very, very low across the state. After COVID, math suffered greatly. Math is built upon, and we probably could use some sort of math boot camp slash alternative type of schooling support program that's ongoing all year for most of our students from K through 12th grade. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maris. So the next question is, as a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts? And it's 2 parts. Are there any areas you would not consider cutting?
Absolutely. I would hire more SEL staff. I would probably, oh gosh, I don't know if I can even say that. I probably can't say what I really want to say. I would probably we pay a lot of money for, so I heard Ms. Jacobson talk earlier about consolidating positions. This year, the superintendent has proposed consolidating a position. I definitely think there are ways that certain positions can be done differently. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Maris. Ms. Jacobson?
I'm not very good at cutting budgets. I think and again, there's going to be, I know, a lot more that I would learn on the other side of this, that I am not privy to that information right now, and so I don't have enough information to fully answer that question. What I do see is that it feels like we leave a lot of money on the table, that we allocate it for things and then we don't use it, at least not in the way that it was specified to use, and then we're like, oh, well, we didn't see the outcomes from that, so we should cut that. And so I do feel like there is not necessarily a misallocation, but like we're not utilizing our resources and our funding in the best way possible. And I would like to investigate how to more creatively use that money. There's a lot of things in the budget I would not consider cutting. When COVID happened, I was quite upset and spoke out about the arts and the STEAM admin positions being cut. Because in my mind, arts and STEAM are where you integrate all of the other subject learners, all the other subject areas that you're learning, and that's when they become real life, is when you integrate them all together and they become something bigger, and then we cut the people in charge of making sure that integration happened. And I feel like we've we lost out on that. And so I think I have a very hard time thinking about cutting things because I would really want to find more money to do more things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. The next question is, what are your thoughts on our school district's programs for special education students, English language learners, and gifted students?
A lot of the reputation that I hear from other people in the district, and myself included, is that the students on both ends of the spectrum tend to get the most resources. So our special ed kids, our advanced learning kids, and then there's a pocket of people in the middle. I think we don't talk to parents enough to hear overall what their feelings are on it. I love the fact that we are known for doing incredible work with IEPs and our special ed kids. I think it's amazing what we're able to do. Full disclosure, my daughter is an ALP, so I don't know anything other than that. That's been my only experience personally, but she's challenged. I love the fact that the things that she is learning in all subjects are all life lessons. So she's learning how to study for a test, not just what's on the test. She's learning how to write in a way that shows your opinion, but then backs it up. And that's a skill you'll need no matter what you do in life. And I do feel like we can use what we learn from ALP and also from the special ed programming and what we're learning to do to individualize education and make sure that we're taking those lessons and applying it to all of our students.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Ms. Mayers?
As a parent and then as a board member, I advocated for ALP. So you're welcome. No, I'm joking. So my oldest, I advocated for ALP because my oldest was moving much faster, and I had teachers, administrators tell me, no, she has to, learn where we're at, and she can have more homework. But I pushed and pushed, and I said yesterday in the board meeting, my people that kind of were against it came at me talking about equity and fairness with regard to the program, and so I'm a little disturbed at how it's kind of turning out right now, but I'm hoping we can get back to a good equitable process for the ALP program. I do think that we have a great ALP program as far as the instruction is concerned. You're right, we don't have an administrator any further specifically over the ALP program. I think our special education programs need to be a little more, I want to say organized, but it's probably the wrong word because I don't want to insult anybody, but I feel like we need a little bit better training for our staff that's working with our special education students. And I don't mean the staff, the teachers, I mean the people that have to work one-on-one or the aides. I feel like they need a little bit more support and tools. There's ABA that they could learn and be taught more with regard to that. I also think we need some more staffing with that. Lastly, our English language learners. I think we do a great process of including our English language learners into our classrooms. I think our students are welcoming and encouraging, but I wish there were more supports for the families. There used to be education classes for our English language learners' families, as well as processes on, and the PTA could do this if you wanted to, how to be engaged in a school district, what your rights are, how to... Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Mary. Hold on, I forgot that. The next question is, what differentiates you from the other board members?
I am probably more emotional than the other board members in the room. I cry, not in the boardroom, but I get contacted by parents because I'm a parent in 3 different grades. I meet other parents. I get directly affected, which is really hard to be president in that role because the president is actually the probably the least powerful person in that room, because you need to constantly balance and hear from everybody. The administration and all the board members, everyone needs to have a voice. So I do think what makes me different, but also what makes me special, is that I feel very strongly. And so when parents share their situations, their stories with me, or their children's experiences, that matters to me. Every single child matters. Inevitably, you, for lack of a better term, end up neglecting your own family because you have to focus on all the other children in the district. And that is a hard thing to do, but I think I do it okay. I don't know, you can ask my kids, but it's a difficult job. I think what, again, differentiates me is my emotional connection to the parents and the kids that go here.
Thank you, Ms. Maris. Ms. Jacobson?
Oh, well, I'm currently in the process of meeting with all of the current board members. You'll be getting an email from me at some point. Excuse me, because I don't know yet. I want to get a better understanding of who they are as people, who they are as board members in terms of their priorities, what it is that they are championing the most. I've met some of them in terms of their role on the board, but them as people, I am still looking to learn more about them. But what I'm hoping for myself to bring to the board is a level of creativity in terms of stretching a dollar, in terms of figuring out new ways to imagine positions, looking at ways to better involve the community, because when we have community involvement, we can bring even more heads into the mix to try to figure out new ways of doing things, potentially get support and resources in different ways. I usually take a problem as just the starting off point, and I like to try to find a solution to them. I've been able to do that a lot with the PTA and make things happen that maybe were a little less doable at the onset, but have become something really wonderful. And I would like to bring that level of ingenuity to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. This is the last question from the community. How do we increase pride within the district? How could we?
Can you repeat that?
How could we increase pride within the district?
Pride. In terms of school spirit?
I guess,
I'm
yes.
guessing is what it means. Actually, it's interesting. I was the spirit commissioner in high school, which was part of student government, and my job was to organize spirit weeks and pep rallies, and I really, really loved it. I have some pictures of me in a very weird blue sequins outfit that I had to wear. It was very goofy. But I think school pride is so important, and I do feel like Greenberg could use a little bit more. I would like to see more community events. I was not able to attend the Wizards game, but my family was, and it actually inspired my daughter to love basketball and try out for the team, and stuff that I don't think would have happened without those events. And so I do feel like more events that bring in the community, more events that go across the schools, and so that we're not so siloed. I think part of what happens with the Princeton model, because we're so truncated, you don't build up any momentum. And when you don't build up momentum, you can't bring people along with you. And that's where pride comes from, is just the energy of your community. And if it's so chopped up, or you have people leave instead of going to the next school, you lose all of that. And so I think that there are other ways that we can use the PTAs, use different community organizations, use Theodore Young, use the library. There's so much programming going out there, and we're not doing enough to bring it all together for our people too, so that we can all go together.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Ms. Maris.
I do have to go back to my previous question, because I'm probably going to have an entire board really angry with me. All of our board members are very committed and connected to parents and students, let me say that. They're all very passionate. They're all parents, actually, within the district, or their child has graduated, so they're all very connected. What I meant by that is I am often moved. I'm emotionally moved by people's situations and needs and their stories, and all of the board members are not. Some are very businesslike and are able to quickly shut that off. I'm not, so that's what I mean. Just want to be clear, guys. Don't get mad at me. Pride. Difficult, it's difficult. My daughter can tell you, who is in the high school, that there is great struggle with pride. And I go back to the high school because I think the kids in the high school are keenly aware of how their community feels about them. And they will say that people call us ghetto, people call us this or that, people say, we do this or it's dangerous. And so because they're keenly aware of that, I think that does sometimes affect pride. But I do think that adults have to put their arms around the students and encourage, support, and encourage pride as well. We talk a lot about student voice, and I do think that students need to be heard and their voices need to be heard. I have to speak very quickly. But I think there's a certain level of professionalism and a certain level of presentation that has to come out of the schools for people to have more respect for the schools as well. Of course, achievement is always good. I did say that in the beginning. We need to have great achievement. We have a student that's going to Columbia that was on the Today Show the other day. That's really great for the district. So those type of things are wonderful. But I think the students feeling their own sense of pride in the inside first as well really helps.
Thank you, Ms. Mears. Now, both candidates were given the opportunity to ask each other a question. And so this question is from Ms. Jacobson to Ms. Mears. If you had unlimited funds to do one thing in the district, what would it be and why?
Unlimited? One thing?
Yes.
Oh, that's not really fair. It would probably be a complete I don't want to say facelift because that makes it sound like just the surface, but a complete remodeling of the district where we would add in a specialized WISE room, which is a room, you remember WISE, which, the RAP room, which is a room where students could drop in and have emotional support at the middle high school, which would have a true dedicated middle school, which would have state-of-the-art athletic facilities with a brand new track, an actual tennis court that works, a swimming pool. So our wonderful medal-winning swim team could swim right here in the district, and many different amenities and services for the students. I would have a dedicated early childhood area that would have pre-K through 2, so unlimited funds. One thing I would do is rebuild and remodel the schools and put in all of the areas and the programmings, a real auditorium with theater, so that kids can actually put on a play with the type of acoustics that we need and the type of lighting that we need, because they put on amazing plays with what we have now, which was built many, many years ago. So that's what I would do, and I would sneak everything that I want to do in there in the remodeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to ask Ms. Jacobson a question?
I would ask the same question. What one thing would you do with unlimited funds?
Mine is actually the same answer, is a complete redo of the buildings. I think when we're even talking about pride, when you walk into a school that looks brand spanking new and has all the best everythings, there is an immediate, I am worthy of all of these things. And I'm excited to be a part of this building and be a part of all of this. And I think the pride comes from the inside out and the outside in. It works in both directions. And I would love to see fresh buildings, new stuff for teachers, the kind of facilities that kids are excited to come in and show it off. And I think that is also my answer, which is part of why I asked the question.
Okay, thank you. Now we will give both of you 2 minutes to make your closing statements. Ms. Jacobson, you may go first.
Okay. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and for listening in. I am very excited for the possibility of being on the board and what I can bring to the table. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from parents, from teachers, from staff. I feel like I've built good relationships that I hope will continue so that their voice is heard as well. I am forever committed to SEL and the work that the district is doing, and I'm excited for everyone else to see what we've been working on, and I think through my position on the board that would help integrate it even further and make sure that it's a priority and that we are giving it the resources it deserves for everyone. And I would like to see the reputation of the district improve because we are reaching out to the community, because we're having these moments like on the Today Show and having ways that our communities, like, they're being challenged for their preconceived notions and realizing that the school in their backyard is where they should be sending their kids. And we don't need to send them to private school. We've got everything we need right here and more. So please vote. Election is May 16th at Woodlands Middle High School. I do have a little quarter sheet flyer if you want more information about me and access to my website. You can email me and send me any concerns, and I will do my best to respond.
What is your website?
It's a goofy looking thing because it's a free domain. It's actually got a QR code on here so you can just scan it. It's a little easier. It's evjacobson, BOE.wixsite, WIXSITE.com/vote. And I'll be out on election day handing those out as well, so you can get information that way, or contact me and I can send you the link.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson. Ms. Mayers?
Please come vote for the school board so that Ms. Jacobson can be just as sleepy as I am. It's a lot of work. We are a body that are of 7 volunteers that live in the district. We don't have to have children, but all of us do have children that have either gone through the district or currently attend the district. And we are committed to public service, to serving the school district, to managing the funds for the district and allocating the funds where they belong with the recommendation of the chief administrator in the district. So support your neighbors, support your own tax dollars, and vote in the school budget, and vote for the Board of Education. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson and Ms. Mayers. I will now turn it over to Ms. Pamela Davis, who will make the closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much for Erin and Tracy for your dedication, your commitment to this district, to our young people, to the community. We look forward to you serving in the capacity of which you have expressed yourself. So we're interested and excited about that. Also, thank you very much, Christine Kane. This is her 2nd year doing this with us as moderator, and she's just getting better and better at it. Throw you around for next year. And to the timekeeper, Muriel St. Amand, who has been, I think, a president from ECP all the way up to Woodlands Middle High School presently as well, and for all of you who have come out physically and those who are out in the YouTube world and social media land. Thank you very much for your support on behalf of the Edith Horn, our president. She did want me to remind you that we did, the PTA Council sent out, this is our 2nd year for our teachers grant that we offered. Teachers could apply for it to do something specific for their class or for the grade level, and we have 2 winners this year. They both came from Lee F. Jackson, Ms. Jane Wasserman, as well as Ms. Delnesia Baker. And of course, it's dealing with the outdoor classroom. It's kind of SEL in there. The outdoor classroom and making the connection, the curricular connection to growing a sensory garden. So we're proud of that, and we look forward to what that's going to bring into the district. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for your support. And if there is nothing else, we are going home.